at FIU. And one element of our work this semester in LAC, a very important element, has been the issue of security in Latin America and the Caribbean. We are planning an event on the state of emergency that has been decreed in El Salvador since March of 2022. We recently organized an event on the state of emergency that was decreed in Ecuador by President Daniel Noboa on January 8th, 2024. And today we are focusing on Haiti. And I think my fellow panelists would probably all agree that the issue of security in Haiti is probably the gravest one in the region. And it's not just an issue of security, it's an issue of governance and constitutionalism and stability. Now, on the weekend, the government declared a state of emergency and a night curfew after criminal gangs stormed Haiti's two biggest prisons and freed more than 3,800 prisoners. At the time, acting Prime Minister Ariel Henry was in Kenya discussing the possible arrival of a UN-backed security force led by 1,000 Kenyan police officers. And so we have this kind of unprecedented activity over the weekend causing further concern. And the question arises, what is next for Haiti? What possible solutions exist to this crisis? And we have a eminently well-qualified panel to discuss this. Our format will be allowing each of them to respond for 5 minutes and then opening things up to questions. And I'd like to introduce the panelists in the order that they will speak. And I can't do justice to their many accomplishments. I'll have to be very brief, but Monique Kleska is a former UN official who worked in international development. She's the author of articles in publications such as Foreign Affairs and Foreign Policy. She's also an author of a novel collection of essays and now a memoir, Silence and Resistance, Memoir of a Girlhood in Haiti. After Monique Kleska, we have Dr. Eduardo Gamara, who's a full professor of political science in the Department of Politics and International Relations at FIU. He's a former director of LAC, and he's the founding director of the Latino Public Opinion Forum. Next, Michelle Austin Pamies is a lawyer and member of Austin Pamies Norris Weeks LLC, a member of the board of the nonprofits Girls Incorporated and Santla, and the former vice president of the Haitian Lawyers Association, also the co-chair of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute. And our fourth panelist, Stan Wojciechowski, is the managing director of Perseus Advisory LLC. He is a former special advisor to the president of Haiti and a former advisor to the Haitian Ministry of Economy and Finance. So if I can begin with Monique, what is next for Haiti?
Thank you very much for the invitation. It truly is an honor to be among these panelists. I think I will start first with the 5 minutes, say that we are in Haiti where the state against the nation and the people, and we have the government and the gangs that are against the population. And so you have a criminal regime that's characterized by corruption, human rights violation, and social injustice, to only cite these. And the situation we are in today, it really shows the failure of the governance, that governance system, because Haitians throughout the country have been resisting and saying that they no longer want this kind of governance. And so I think it's important to know that the Biden administration supports France, Canada, European Union, the United Nations. So the big mastodonts are supporting this kind of criminal regime. Having said this, what next? I think in the immediate short term, it depends on what governance is in place. We have now the last few governance that might be, or if through negotiations and through diplomatic work, there is a governance that breaks with a corruption criminal kind of regime, then we can have a different type of policies, different type of actions. But there are no good, and I think why there are no good options, and because there are about 4 million people who are going. You have about, and every day that the gangs are gaining territory, the number of displaced is rising. You have state institutions that are totally, either they were in service to particular persons or else they are practically existing.
Did we lose her?
Monique, I think we've lost you. We'll try to reconnect you, but in the meantime, I wanted to turn things over to Professor Gamara for his comments.
Thank you, Anthony. It would have been very, very useful and important to listen to Monique. So I do hope that she's able to reconnect. So let me begin by noting the following, right? And your question is about what comes now rather than a description of what's there, right? But the reality is that today and over the weekend, and at least, the situation in Haiti has probably reached even graver moments than it already has been in for at least the better part of the last 5 to 8 years. Having said that, right? And I want to sort of be academic for a few moments, and then get into some more practical observations. Number one, as I think Monique was saying, Haiti has no state, and it's been a while since Haiti has not had a state. Many might even argue that Haiti has never had a state. But I think it's also easy to kind of fall in the trap of saying that Haiti is a failed state. I think that Haiti is in a situation that I believe is even worse than a failed state, and that is a situation of anomie. Not only in terms of the complete disappearance of any institutions, right? Any legitimate institutions, but also in sort of the inversion of values that has occurred in Haiti, where the authority today that exists in Haiti is largely provided by these gangs. And the fact that what appears to be happening is a unification of the gangs, and to a certain extent, the leadership by one of the most important gang leaders. Everybody knows about barbecue. But also that in the context that we're seeing in Haiti, there are other political forces that are there. One, Moïse Jean-Charles, who just a couple of weeks ago talked about bringing down everything and then rebuilding. The return of somebody like Guy Philippe, who's been talking about a revolution. And then, of course, Haiti is also trapped by an international community that offers no real possibility of helping Haiti resolve the situation. We don't know really when and if ever this international force will make it into Haiti. Not just because of what's happening in Kenya legally, but also just because I think the ability to deploy that force is really something quite difficult. But then, so if those are the prospects for Haiti, between gangs, between political leaders that are probably not likely to have the muscle to take power, and an inactive or an ineffective international force, right? one of the things that that of course is out there, and it's precisely that the criticism that Monique was leveling against the current government of Haiti with Mr. Henry, right? The promise that was made by Henry was the promise of elections, right? The promise that elections would be held before the beginning of February. But the reality is, and this is an important reality to understand, that uh, to hold elections in Haiti, and I think those who believe that elections are the solution to the situation, I think they have to understand also that when Mr. Henry, for example, talked about elections, the Provisional Electoral Court opened up the electoral registry for new parties, and 108 political parties registered, right? 108. That tells you a little bit about how atomized the political situation is in Haiti. Um, the other thing that's important to note is that the Provisional Electoral Council in Haiti uh, does not have an updated voter registration. They're still going on the 2000 census. And so this is an outdated census, an outdated figure on who really is able to vote in Haiti. So that makes it even more complex to define how elections might be the possible solution to everything in the country. And not to mention the fact, of course, that like is the case with every other political institution, the Provisional Electoral Council also has absolutely no ability to organize a new round of elections. And that, again, that elections are always largely about, the determining the legitimacy of the new government. And the history of Haitian elections tells us that we will likely have very low political participation, that we will be unable to control things like voter fraud, that we will be unable to control, in essence, the very process of running a clean and open and legitimate electoral process, in part because gangs govern at least Port-au-Prince. So my sense, and again, it's perhaps in the second round I can address this, but given that scenario, what are the prospects then for Haiti going forward? And I think it has to begin with a profound involvement of Haitian society, Haitian political leadership in putting forth a legitimate alternative. It has to also function with an international community willing to help in ways that lead to a legitimate outcome of the political process there. And then finally, of course, and this is perhaps the hardest thing to say, that without any order, without an end to the violence that's characterizing the politics in Haiti today, going forward is going to be extraordinarily difficult. So let me end there, Tony.
Thank you. Thank you, Eduardo. Just to remind the panelists, we do have 4 questions that have come in, so there will be time to get back to some other points. But Monique, are you able to connect with us again and to finish your thoughts?
I don't see her.
Yes, I hope so.
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Welcome to Haiti and the internet. Sorry about that. What I was saying was there are no good options on whether or not you have the same system, and there are movements within the last few days that a former criminal could be in the presidency soon. And if you have the same continuing thing with Ariel, which is kind of regime, with regardless of it, they are the likely coaction, or you have to pacify, establish security. And we have seen the challenge, because right now it is either unwilling, and there is that part also, which is extremely important, because even the policeman union is contesting the authority, police, and his hierarchy. And then there is that establish a security. And then there is the managing the massive humanitarian catastrophe. As I was saying, in terms of the data sets that I'm sharing, people losing money, displaced, people traumatized, etc. And then there is another element, which
Well,
Sorry, Monique, I think we've lost Monique again, but we should probably turn to Michelle.
Good afternoon. Thank you to FIU for putting together this panel and for caring about an issue that's very dear to all of us in the Haitian American community here in South Florida and throughout the US. I have a few minutes, and I'll start by saying that I believe what's next for Haiti, and I'll predict, is Ariel Henry's resignation. The Haitian American Diaspora, I'm here representing the Haitian American Foundation for Democracy. And we've worked for a few years now in trying to promote a change in US policy. In particular, we wanted to see that the US recognized that it was backing the wrong horse with Ariel Henry, who had no legitimacy or popular support in country, and that we needed to have a transition made up of elements that would provide us with a possibility of a better Haiti in the future. And what we're talking about here, we're talking about credible elements, right? Credible individuals, which it's often not said when speaking about Haiti that these people exist, right? It seems as if it's a whole big mess. No one's competent, no one's qualified, everyone's criminal. Well, we beg to differ. We are Haitian Americans, but our hearts are that we are Haitians. We are Haitians culturally, and remain such. We know the people in our country, and we know that they are credible, legitimate forces who'd like to see an improvement in the country. And they're not just outside of the country in the diaspora, they're in the country as well. We tried to advance that policy with the US, speaking about how there were different accords, and there was one legitimate one. At the time, it was the Montana Accord, which really united civil society members that they should have supported. We couldn't get that support. Now, we're not saying it has to be the Montana Accord as the only group that's in the country capable of making progress. But we do believe that there are other folks, whether they be in the business sector, private sector, whether they're in civil society, or whether they are some of the more respected political parties. Let's be clear, when we talk about all these different political parties, the reality of it is that there are a bunch of them which are made up of one person. And we could kind of discount them. And if there were some rules in place to say, before you can run for office, you really would, as a party, you'd need to have a membership made up of X number that is somehow verified. All of a sudden, we'd have like 10. The key right now to what's the future, Ariel Henry will resign, and he's going to resign because he chooses to do so at this time. He's overwhelmed. He hasn't been able to govern. He hasn't been able to provide security in the country. And at this point, after the prison breaks and after the fact that the airport's been attacked and everything else, he can't provide security for himself. I venture to say that in order for him to go to Haiti right today, he would need an exterior force to support his presence back into the country. It would either be that or he'd have to negotiate with the gangs, and I don't know what path that would lead him to. So given that we strongly believe that he will leave, and he will leave promptly. We need a plan. And there are alternatives being circulated by different groups in society. And we're supportive of a plan that would include putting together what we would say a governing council or presidential council made up of 3 or more members, 3 to 5, some say 3, some say 5. We wouldn't care which one. That would have in its leadership recognize civil leaders and people deemed credible within the country. And there are those that are indisputably credible. So I think that that's the future for now. And once you have that governance in place, that governance would be the one to ask the international community for the security support it needs. Not the one that's imposed, but what it needs. And as a Haitian American, focusing on the word American, we want our US government to listen to us, to care about what we think, to care about what the Haitian people need, and to start by leaving that horse behind, the one that they've been backing forever with no positive result, and to try to work with this credible leadership to come up with a plan that would support a presidential council, and then we can talk about how the security situation will be resolved. I'll have one last thing to say before we talk about any questions, is that when a crisis is this severe, it didn't need to get here, but it is, people tend to go for the easiest solution, meaning that all of a sudden, because it's so critical, well, maybe this former person who was convicted of drug trafficking or money laundering in the States is an option. Or maybe the one who has as a vision to destroy Haiti before rebuilding it is an option. We don't need to go to the criminal element, to something drastic, to something ridiculous. We can go to credible society members and ask them to lead while we figure out the rest. The vote will have to come at some point in time, but when the vote comes, it will come with a credible leadership and some security in the country. This is the thoughts from the Haitian American Foundation for Democracy.
Interesting. Thank you, Michelle. Stan, I'd like to bring you in on and to give your response.
Thank you, Dr. Pereira. And thank you for inviting me on this panel along with my fellow panelists. In my 14 years involved in Haiti, I've always claimed that Haiti's salvation would come by way of its women. And so I want to start by recognizing Michelle and Monique, whom I hold in high regards, and who for the battles that they've waged tirelessly, each in their respective spaces, whether with the Montana Corps or HAVD. Something that I've discovered is Haitian women have a capacity to organize while the men are busy fighting. And so we need to see more women involved in the political process. But the fact remains that politics in Haiti is a very violent activity and a very dangerous one. And so today we're in a situation that has no equal. I don't think there is any precedent in our hemisphere, or for that matter, in our lifetimes around the world, as we watch the demise of a nation before our very eyes. And while international stakeholders debated for the past year on whether to send a multinational force to Haiti, Haiti saw 5,000 violent homicides, an eightfold increase from 10 years ago when Eduardo and I used to work in Haiti. Of the 9,000 police officers comprising the force in 2022, 1,700 were either killed or left, for the most part, with the Biden visa program. As we approach the arrival of this multinational force, which is expected to cost roughly $600 million a year, it baffles the mind that this Henry government paid $500 million to repay the Venezuela Petrocaribe debt a few days ago. It's reasonable to ask why this money was not mobilized to fight gangs and save lives. So what can we do today? First of all, I think we're all talking about a transition and a political outcome, but it seems that the facts on the ground are moving faster than what we're able to predict. And so none of us have a crystal ball, and it would be very cavalier to claim to know what will happen in the coming hours, days, and weeks. But it is an unsustainable situation. And I think we are collectively responsible. I hear all too often Haitians saying that they're responsible for their own situation. But frankly, I think the international community has a collective responsibility as well. What we can do here in South Florida, because it feels that we are often disconnected from the reality on the ground. But I want to say something, besides raising awareness, people are dying in Haiti on a daily basis under American manufactured guns and bullets, imported freely from our US-based communities, right here in South Florida in some cases. And we're tasked with this impossible mission to predict what comes next. I think if there's something that we as a local community can do is hold our officials to account, hold gun manufacturers to account, hold logistics companies that import and export goods to Haiti to account. A bit like what we've seen in the cases of Ukraine, or even more so with Gaza, where citizens themselves decided to block ports that were exporting weapons. We need to be a little more activist and not just speak about what should be done. And I think as foreigners, no matter how emotionally invested we are in Haiti, we also need to be a little humble, because I think part of where we are today with this country is because of the righteousness and the sort of lecturing that we tend to have with regards to the Haiti policy. And at the end of the day, the Haitian-led solutions by Haitians for Haitians is, to me, just a soundbite. But really, if we listen to Michelle and to Monique, a lot of the Haitian-led solutions that have been put forth to core group stakeholders have not been embraced. So I'm very open to this discussion, but I think the reality on the ground might very well accelerate a transition that nobody wants. And so where do we go from here? I'm as much I'm not sure where we go from here. I think the security aspect is the number one that needs to be addressed, and anything that comes after will come as a result of an improvement in the security aspect in Haiti. I will say one last thing. Over the last few months, I've spoken with a number of stakeholders, including General Wesley Clark. I think there is a need for accountability with regards to the multinational force. And perhaps an independent panel of experts will be well advised to make sure that there is transparency, that there are rules of engagement, that there are conventions, whether Geneva or Vienna, that are abided by, that there are courts that are there to prosecute human rights violation. And I think the Kenyans and the Beninois and the Bahamians have their work cut out for them, because over the last 48 hours, the number of gang members has doubled. If the release of the prison cellmates is any indication, they're up against a much bigger force than they prepared for. So I open now the floor to questions and comments, but certainly I think we need to be on top of our elected officials, be it federal, state, municipal, to make sure that our voices are heard above and beyond think tanks and academia.
Thank you, Stan. I think the best way for me to handle the next phase is just to read some of the questions that have come in. I'm not sure I'm going to get to all of them. Some of them you can see in the chat. Some of them came separately before the beginning of the webinar, but let me just go through some of them. I'm going to throw out a lot of different issues, a lot of different questions. Panelists, if you could just take notes and respond to those that you think are closest to to your own thinking about this issue. And they, of course, they go well beyond the question of what next for Haiti, which I opened the webinar with. So from Michael Bennett, we have, how does Haiti move towards stabilization without an international security force and without an internal National Guard to combat the gang violence and control? From Victoria Dupont, it's a question that many of you have been dealing with in your comments. How does Haiti get out of this mess? Is there a plan? Who will implement it? Please do talk about the challenges and please talk about the possible solutions. From Jacques Julien, we have a three-part question, which is how can Prime Minister Henry organize credible elections? Of course, Michel is saying that he might be gone very soon. Are there presently any investigations into what happened, how the prisoners escaped from the jails on the weekend? And why haven't the US and other external actors, the international community, explored the possibility of Haitian-based solutions? From Fermin Bakker, he comments that it's not enough to talk about what's next. We need to discuss what's happened and what mistakes have been made in the past and how those mistakes can be avoided. So if you could talk about how did Haiti get here, comment over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Rita Cole asks, hasn't Haiti gone down since the last earthquake, and the earthquake of 2010? Patrick Bayon says, please don't just say what needs to be. How does it get done? How is there a transition? So very practical there about how a transition could happen. Chris Martin is the author of Stability, an Irregular Warfare Perspective in the Small Wars Journal. And he asks, could the gangs be, if they're part of the problem, could they be part of the solution? Could the government engage in some sort of dispute resolution mechanism with them, some sort of negotiation with them? Andrea Uert asks, how much of the growing unrest is due to opposition to Henri? Fermin Bakker, again, specifically to Professor Gamada, could there be local elections if there can't be a national election? Could local elections be a step towards at least giving communities some legitimate authority holders? Colin Agee asks, what are the expectations of the Kenyan-led force, and is it likely to be effective if it does come? An anonymous person asked, what happened to CARICOM's role in this crisis? Jean Julien of UMass Boston says, how can Haiti address this if the tools of democracy have been stripped from it by the international community? And this one, I think, is especially close to Michel's interests. How can the Haitian diaspora become an agent, become a protagonist, and become effective in addressing these issues? So there's a lot there, but let's go in the order that we went before, and I'll give you about 5-6 minutes each. Monique is back. Monique, were you able to hear that?
Yes, I was able to hear that. I'm very sorry with this
No, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
We all know how bad Wi-Fi can be. Monique, why don't you start off, and then we'll go in the order that we went before.
Okay, I'll answer a few questions. In terms of CARICOM, which is the last thing, the CARICOM approached things a little bit in a very, I would call, undignified manner. The eminent persons came with all the arrogance of being former prime ministers of their countries and thinking of us, the stakeholders, as perhaps disturbing stakeholders in a sense, and looking at Henri as he is the power person. And every time we propose things, it was, well, let's go back to Henri. And basically, ever since last year, we started saying that Henri really was part of the problem and he had to go. This was way before the massive demonstrations asking for Henri's removal, massive demonstrations since late last year, and particularly January and February of this year. So at the last CARICOM meeting, they came up with a solution. Apparently, after 25 hours of discussion, they said that Henri had promised that he would hold elections before August of 2025. Well, there were several problems there. Henri is not legitimate. People are asking for his removal. This discussion was held with only Henri and his people as stakeholders. The other stakeholders were not there. And why is CARICOM from Guyana telling the Haitian people that elections will be held by August 2025? Henri was not even able to negotiate to say, give me some time when I get back and I can announce it to the people. And then he went to Kenya, and we haven't heard from him since then. So CARICOM now, they had decided to hold a meeting today and tomorrow, but all Haitian stakeholders invited, most of them, I would say, have said no, they are not interested in going because Henri's departure was not put on the table. They wanted to discuss elections, they wanted to discuss other things, but Henri's departure is the first item on the agenda. So practically everybody said no. So I don't know what will happen with that, but what we have realized is that the eminent persons group has been put aside, and now it seems like it is the heads of state who have taken over the kind of negotiation. The invitation for today and tomorrow was not from the eminent persons group. So I think they have been put aside. Maybe I could just answer to another question in terms of the gangs. May I just say that there was an institution created to discuss with the gangs, a disarmament commission. But the disarmament commission almost appeared sometimes with their media people, almost as if they were the spokespersons for the gangs. And one time there was even a disarmament member who was called to get someone who had been kidnapped. So the linkages between this commission that was supposed to be to disarmament are very fishy and not appropriate, if I could say that way. So I think one has to think of another solution in terms of if there has to be some discussion with the gangs, because they call themselves, Barbecue said that in his news conference, surrounded by arms, he said, we are armed groups. And I think, you know, when you're discussing with armed groups, it cannot be a commission that has to deal with that. I think it has gone beyond that. And right now it's a little too late, because they now control the state. And that is the situation today. It's not that they control 80% of the territory, they control Port-au-Prince, and they control the state of Haiti. So I will leave it here, and maybe I can come back for a couple of questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, Monique. If we can go to each of the other panelists with about 4 or 5 minutes. We're running out of time, but Professor Gamata.
Yeah, very quickly, and sort of taking off on what Monique just said. Look, the biggest challenge in Haiti is the formation of a legitimate government. And that, of course, has been a challenge for a long time. It's not a very recent thing. This is something that's been going on for quite a long time. And so I think, you know, it's important to ask the following question: what happens the day after Henri resigns, which is what Michel is proposing? And unless there are some steps that are taken in between, right? So right now we have a vacuum, even with Henri still nominally as the prime minister, with the support of the international community, right? But imagine a scenario where Henri resigns and there is no succession mechanism in place. I think that's a recipe for even a greater disaster. So the question is you know, is it possible to do what Michel suggests, to establish some kind of a transition there between Henri and whatever is to come next, and who is going to select that group of notables to govern Haiti, particularly given divisions that exist there, right? That there are 108 political parties is I think representative of that deep atomization that you have in Haiti and the inability of groups in Haiti to come together without even the influence of the international community. So maybe if you change the rules, but somebody has to change the rules. And right now, the electoral council is also not legitimate. So who will change the rules in order to whittle down the number of political alternatives? And then I think it's important to understand that in the context of Henri's departure, supposing if he resigned, that tomorrow basically the only authority, the only ones who have a monopoly over the use of force, not a legitimate monopoly, which is the function of the state, but the only ones who have a monopoly over the use of force are the gangs. And so the only ones capable of enforcing anything in Haiti today appear to be the gangs. And until that's solved, of course, it becomes even a more difficult situation. That said, let us assume we want to negotiate with the gangs. 5, 6 years ago, many in Haiti were talking about the Ecuador model for Haiti. Not the current Ecuador or Bukele model, but the model in which President Correa negotiated with the Latin kings and arrived at an agreement in which the gangs put down their arms and so on. Today, in retrospect, that was a bad idea. But even let's assume that we can negotiate with the gangs. Who is to negotiate with the gangs? There is no room for negotiation. So that leaves us then with a scenario that is really quite complex. And so to answer the question directly that somebody asked, can elections not be held at the national level? Can we hold them at the local level? In fact, I might even venture to say that one of the real problems Haiti had in terms of its governance crisis was its inability to hold local elections. It wasn't able to hold parliamentary elections, and therefore you had this very gradual vacuum of institutionality as we were, we witnessed the inability of Haiti to elect a parliament. So I'm going to end with a controversial statement. I certainly believe, as many of my colleagues have noted, that it is extraordinarily important to engage Haitians both in Haiti and in the diaspora. But they have to be engaged in something that is realistic about the future of Haiti. We can philosophize a lot about what we would like to see Haiti to look like, but there are steps that need to be taken, and those are very difficult steps. And those steps certainly need to involve Haitians first and foremost. But I also think that there is a moral imperative right now on the part of the international community. Stan's figures are very, very important. But let's also look at what that other diaspora, not the organized, well-to-do diaspora, but let's look at that other diaspora that's all over Latin America and that's been walking up to the border, that's been getting to the border and then being deported by this administration and previous ones. That's a diaspora that's continuing to build, and something needs to be done to address what in fact Monique said. This is the worst humanitarian crisis that Haiti has ever experienced, and it needs to be addressed because there is a moral imperative in terms of Haitians, but also a moral imperative in terms of the international community.
Thank you, Eduardo. Michelle, a couple other questions have come in. Fritz Octave, is the Red Cross helping with the humanitarian crisis? And another one on could El Salvador and Rwanda be models for Haiti? But please pick and choose what you want to respond to.
Okay, among the questions, I'll start by saying that as Haitian Americans, we cannot put our hands up and just say, okay, well, it is what it is, and we'll accept what it is. It's not an option for us, like you said, Dr. Pereira, I think it was Dr. Kamara, it's a moral imperative. And I want to say that we do not distinguish ourselves from the less affluent Haitians who are walking into Mexico. I do not distinguish myself from the Haitians who took the boats to come here in the 80s, even though I did not. We are Haitians and we care about Haitian people, okay? And the way we feel about it is that these people who are suffering from going from Chile to Mexico on foot are our people who would not have had to do that had they in fact had a country to live in. They don't have one. They're running away. It's just terrible. Like you said, it's a humanitarian crisis that is creating that. I don't think, Stan said something about the fact that it would be cavalier to say, to predict what's going to happen. And that this, talking about resignation, maybe Stan may think it's a cavalier statement. I just think it's desperate, and that he's probably left with no choice. He should have done it sooner in name of country. I would propose that were he to be doing it now, he should try to do it in a concerted manner. He wouldn't have to just run, that he should try to negotiate it such that he could be at a table, turning it over to some credible individuals. And again, I'm not going to name them, but listen, there are multiple proposals for what is now the Haitian Transition Council to be reconfigured. Maybe one person remains, two others are named by different sectors that are deemed credible. There are multiple options like that on the table that need to be fleshed out, but they're pretty close to each other, all these options, by the people who were negotiating in Jamaica, by the people who are the business community, by the Haitian American community. They're not even far from each other. They're just saying, let's get a team, 3 to 5, depending on who you speak to, who would in fact lead this country. And it would be best for the country if it was a turnover of power with Oyelere at the table, rather than some kind of mess in which he just exits and some other group unknown with criminal intent comes into power. So we are not going to do the root cause analysis of what got us here, because I think that the root cause analysis may be done by maybe the next government, but we all know some of the elements. And the next government should be focused on trying to do that transition. Now, I'm going to throw this out again. Somebody's saying, how are you going to do it without any security forces and you don't have a police or whatever? One of the things that makes me talk about abandonment of the Haitians in the country is that even the police that were there or are there don't seem to be in the streets providing security for the people. In other words, if we were to have heard that there were 1,000 police officers on some street where the events were occurring all at once, looking as if they had an agenda to stop a massacre. No such thing. As a matter of fact, right now, they're not to be seen anywhere in that country. Some of them were at the airport. They were trying to fight off the gangs at the airport. Some of them did show up. That's kind of like a unique circumstance. Oh, they were there. They were at the airport. How many of them were there? Did they really control the airport, or is it to be revisited by the gangs? There's an abandonment. We're not saying that you don't need any security, you don't need any multinational force. That's not realistic. But what you do need is leadership to engage that international force, to engage that international community, to come up with a plan for Haiti that's not an imposed plan. And we also don't want the US to back out of it. The US cannot just simply say, we're going to turn it over to the Kenyans. The US has been involved in Haiti forever, and the US, other than Haitians in Haiti, and the Haitian American diaspora, who is Haitian, the US knows best what's going on the ground in that country. It cannot simply turn away. It can sponsor whoever else, but it has to be in it, involved, engaged, because they have always been, and they can't turn their backs now. We are counting on our government to be present. End of story.
Thank you, Michelle. Stan, there's a lot to respond to. You can pick your particular points at this stage.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Pereira. I started by saying that this is an unprecedented situation for which we don't have either a template or blueprint to fix Haiti. I will say that it's pretty clear that we now have a template of what not to do to fix nations that are facing extremely harsh circumstances. I will say another statement is that it is usually the norm that in presidential electoral years, immigration and the economy dominate debates, but I like to venture that I think this year foreign policy is going to be at the forefront. And this administration will have to answer, I think, to their constituents, including Haitian American constituents, as to why we are still here in the situation worse than ever. I'm not going to talk, as Michelle stated, on the root causes. I think there are a lot of primers and a lot of writings that have been published about why we are here today in this situation. I want to talk of the impasse of a transition over the past year between the core group and elements of civil society and diaspora, organized diaspora, to try and impress upon core group partners the need for an exit strategy of the Henri government. But the fact that we are here at an impasse on a transition with our international partners may very well mean that a transition will be imposed on the ground, whether we like it or not. And we have been hearing rumors over the last few hours that Guy Philippe, a former convict, until recently in a jail cell, responsible in great part for the overthrow of Aristide 20 years ago, back in country a few weeks ago, is now claiming this transition for himself with, I would say, a coalition of not like-minded partners, may I say. Moïse Jean-Charles, for one, said that he had always been an enemy of Guy Philippe, and then suddenly he finds himself having a common cause. And so we might very well find ourselves tomorrow morning with new facts on the ground that we are not given an option to opine upon. And it'll be very interesting to see how the US administration and in Washington policymakers respond to that new fact on the ground. But if it means that this transition is forced upon everybody and that the end result in terms of policy is putting Haiti further in an embargo, then I think, again, we're failing Haitians and Haiti.
Thank you, Stan. We're running close to the end of time. I did want to just say thank you to all of the people who followed this, who asked questions, who showed incredible commitment and knowledge. And this is something that we will come back to. LAC really believes in having dialogue on this issue. We will have other events on Haiti. It's urgent, and we'll keep involved. I don't want to try to sum up what I wanted to do, because I see that Monique has her hand up, and Monique, you did suffer unique problems with your Wi-Fi, and so I wanted to give you a chance to close us out.
Thank you. Just two things in particular. I wanted us to keep in mind that 65% of the population of Haiti is under 24 years old. So if we do not resolve the issues of social injustice and inequality, we are just beginning to feed into the gang in the long term. And this is not a particular Haitian issue. They are seeing it with terrorism also in West Africa. So please remember that whatever solution, whatever things are being talked about, we're talking about the troops coming, but we're not talking about investing that money into education, professional schools, healthcare. These are the things that can prevent them going into the gangs and taking an M14 and an M1 or a Kalashnikov. So that is the first part. And the second part, as Michelle said, there are mechanisms. And the mechanism for transition that the Montana Accord has shared with CARICOM, with Jonathan Powell, with the State Department, they all have that mechanism since last October. So there are mechanisms. And unfortunately, by pushing Henri the same way that they push a Duvalier, we are where we are today, as Stan says, with no good options and with a former federal convict saying he's going to enter the White House, the presidential palace. And they signed earlier today, and they are about to enter whenever, today or tomorrow or in the few days. So we have to watch, but there are no good options. And I think we really need to speak to the powers that be in Washington, because it was such a missed opportunity to change the paradigm. And it's not too late. It's not too late, because I'm an optimist and a realist. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. That's a good positive ending. Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Stan. I wanted to thank Daniel Gonzalez for all his work on this issue. The issue of alternatives to gangs is crucial on our other event next month on El Salvador as well. There's a similar issue there in Central America. So I really appreciate the time you've given us, your expertise, and appreciate the audience. And thank you, and hope we can do this again soon.
Thank you.